Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland street scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking, true stories need no embellishment.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Today we have a special guest, Trench Reynolds, and he's a blogger and a researcher and an expert on the West Memphis 3 case. And as you know, we've done a ton of shows on the West Memphis 3, and we intend to keep doing more shows until we can really even the playing field of the information that gets out there to the public. Now, his website is trenchreynolds.com. That's where you can find his blog, where he writes all these really great articles, very impressive stuff. And his Twitter is Trench Reynolds. Twitter at Trench Reynolds. And that's Trench, Trench, not Trent, like a lot of people probably mistake it all the time. Trench, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, man, nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so I've been really impressed with your work, too, and everybody compliments it. Everybody who follows this case is always talking about, another great article by Trench Reynolds. So it's a really pleasure to talk to you. So why don't you tell us about yourself and then how you got involved in this case?
Well, I was raised in a small New Jersey town, and it was very staunchly Catholic, and I was... I was a kid who was into heavy metal, wore all black, had long hair, so I kind of identified with the, when I first saw the first Paradise Lost movie, I kind of identified with Damien Echols and the whole supposed profiling. And then...
let me ask you this. What year did you first see the movie?
I first saw the movie in 2001.
Okay. Well, when did it came out? In 96, right?
Yeah, it came out in 96.
Yeah, so I guess you saw it on HBO as a repeat.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and it
one of their free weekends probably.
I hear you, man. I got basic cable myself, right? I could barely keep the internet on to do the show. Oh my God, it's. Remember when cable used to be cheap? You know, like cable TV was cheap. You know, it had a little bill.
Yeah, I remember when cable was like $20 a month. Yeah.
And what happened? And it was supposed to be, you know, this is a great service for everybody. We're going to dig a hole in front of your house and put this cable line in. Because I'm from the East Coast too. I'm from Staten Island originally, where I first heard about this case way back in those days, 96, 97. Okay, so go ahead. What were you saying?
I don't know. So I was just saying, like, I was originally a supporter of the West Memphis Three.
Right.
And, but, I've been blogging about crime for 15 years now, and one of my main topics that I blog about is school shootings, especially Columbine. And as I was writing about Columbine, I was noticing the similarities between Eric Harris and Damien Echols. So I slowly started to turn from a supporter to a opponent of the West Memphis Three. And the more I researched on it, the more I was finding out that the movies were leaving out huge pieces of information, and that they were obviously biased towards the West Memphis Three.
Yeah, and even though that now we know that, even when you first watch it, though, it's almost like 50-50. Like they still leave some doubt that these guys are, it's like, well, okay, they're convicted. They probably did it. But there's some doubt that maybe they didn't,
Right.
Yeah. And mostly, the stuff that points to that is stuff that now we know is all inaccurate.
Yeah, exactly. And, like I said, I was that kid, like Echols, except, without all the violence.
Yeah.
So I could identify with it. So I was just like one of the supporters. But like I said, one time, what turned me was they were doing an interview. There was an article with Dr. Dale Griffiths, who you had on your show, and it talked about how inaccurately he was portrayed in all of the movies. So when I did further research on this, reading the infamous Callahan report, which I'm sure a lot of people reference, it's just that the inaccuracies that were portrayed in the movie made me question, what else did they leave out?
Yeah, he's such a nice guy too, really sincere. And just like yourself too, I didn't grow up as a heavy metal guy, but I was like a hippie. I was one of the hippies in New York City. And I had a ponytail, long hair, and a beard as an anarchist, So I identified with these kids too. I thought, because I'm for the underdog,
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And they try and they play on your sympathies in that movie. But you're right, with Dr. Dale Griffiths, this guy, and we've gotten into all his credentials. This guy was a 24-year police veteran, retired a captain, consulted with the FBI, wrote a book. It was involved with the congressional testimony where he gave a press conference at the National Press Club for one of these big hearings down in Congress.
Right, and in the movie they talk about how he had a degree from a mail order school that was not even accredited.
Yeah.
But when it turns out he's got several degrees from brick and mortar universities, and he studied under some of the most decorated police in our country, if I remember correctly.
It's so true. And not only that, too, but even after we just did this last show, because the guy was like 76 years old, and he said, this is the last interview I'm ever going to do. And so I says, I felt so good. I says, here's this guy. We got his record now. We got him on record. We cleared all this misconceptions, all this inaccuracies. But these guys, these supporters, are so thick-headed that they just repeat that same stuff. And people are writing the comments on the YouTube video. Oh, no.
I know.
Yeah, but without even listening to the video, because we go over all that stuff about his education as well as other topics. Now, why do you think that is?
Well, I think not just the Paradise Lost movies, but I think there's like a whole cottage industry.
Yeah.
Like on certain TV shows as well, like on the major networks where they portray, this person was wrongly accused and sat on death row for so many years, and they try to make it act like this, that there's some kind of, that everybody who's ever been to jail has been falsely accused.
Well, if you ask them, that's what they'll
And
say.
they prey on people's emotions, and they try and, make it look like some of these people, are choir boys, when it's usually these people are where they belong.
Yeah, and I would say that's definitely true in this case. And now, are you familiar? I did a show with William Ramsey, and he actually named the PR firm that runs Eccles' PR team, you know? And it's not some little fly-by-night operation. This is a serious PR team. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with the PR team itself, but I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a huge company that handles like big giant clients. It's in the one of those interviews I did with William Ramsey. If people want to go back and look for it and find it, I would recommend everybody to go to all the interviews we've done on West Memphis Straight, because we've covered just about every angle. We've had Terry Hobbs on the show, Sean Wheeler, who I think is the godfather of West Memphis facts and truth and justice in the American way. And now we got Trench Reynolds, who's another all-star. So I would recommend everybody go back and follow everything that we've done on this so far. And I got some stuff coming up planned in the future, too. I want to do a whole show around Exhibit 500 and bring in some real forensic psychologists to analyze that and give us their estimation on it. Now, I'm sure you've read Exhibit 500, right?
Yes, I have.
Well, what can you tell us?
That's where I discovered, things that made me question why I was supporting it.
Yeah. So now, what did you find in Exhibit 500? Why don't you describe it to the audience, what it is and what you discovered when you read it?
Well, the Callahan 500 is a series of copies of a lot of the evidence used in the trials and a lot of witness testimony. It's cited often by both supporters and non-supporters. And one of the most damning things I found in there was an account by a witness where Damien Eccles allegedly found a sick dog to death.
Yeah.
And that was not, I don't remember that being in either of the first two movies. I've never seen the third one. But, I don't remember them portraying that. And so I found out, that Damien Eccles had this long history of mental illness and even admits to having violent and homicidal thoughts.
Yeah, right. And as far as that stomping the dog and having the dog's skulls in his room, and his mother even said in some of that paperwork that they were hanging from the clothesline in the backyard, drying out and bleaching in the sun, all that kind of stuff. There were dogs' heads, cats' heads, and a rat head, I believe. And I have never heard once Damien Eccles ask that question when he's been on Larry King or any of these talk shows, because all the questions are screened totally.
Of course, yeah. It's all part of the Damien Eccles hype machine.
Yeah. Even in the old days when they would do these chat, when they were still in prison, and the big Kathy Bach and Burke Saul's website would put on those chats where they would chat with them in prison. I would get kicked out of the chat room in the first 5 minutes before I can even ask a question.
Right.
Yeah. And then ultimately I got banned. Did you get banned from there as well?
Oh, well, at those times I was still a supporter, right. But I wasn't as much as a supporter as I would go in the chat room. But now that I've experienced how they work, I'm not surprised I'm surprised it took them that long.
Yeah, you're right. Well, as soon as they would see me come in, they'd say, "Oh, there's nons in here. We got to be careful. I'm going to keep an eye on him." "Oh, don't worry, I'm watching him." Yeah, like, what am I going to do?
That's another thing. I find it funny that people who oppose the West Memphis Three are labeled as nods, and then they accuse us of being closed-minded.
Yeah, that's so true. Now, what do you think it is that drives these people to go to such extremes? Because we both had our individual problems with these guys. And so is William Ramsey.
Now, like I've said, because there's a fine line between the two, but it's not an occult thing, but a cult-like thing. Eccles now that he's out of jail, reminds me so much of David Koresh. It's not even funny. I mean, there was a guy who was, like Mr. Rock and Roll and wanted to be, and thought he was some kind of guru and all that, and it didn't end up too well for him.
Yeah, I would say so.
And that's what this is all about. It's Damien Eccles' cult of personality. I mean, he just wants to be worshipped.
Yeah. Now, what do you make, though, of the occult aspect to this? Because obviously now it's come out that he is a member of the OTO, and that they named their library after him, and he was a member in the prison ministry. He was a member of the OTO prison ministry. Follower Aleister Crowley, although he's denied it for years and years. William Ramsey pulled up the documents from the OTO chapter down there themselves that said he was a member, giving them lauds and platitudes. So what do you make of this, of his practicing, I guess, black magic or occult practices?
I think if there was a lot of kids, like I said, I grew up, in the heavy metal crowd. So there was a lot of kids who go around going, yeah, I'm a Satanist, or I read about Aleister Crowley, and they didn't know anything.
Right.
They just said it just to say it and make themselves look tough and try and be badasses. And I think that's exactly what Eccles was doing. He in some ways he seems brilliant, in other ways he seems as bad, not the sharpest tool in the shed. And I think that's one of his ways. I think this was just something that he would say to try and make himself look bad make himself look like some kind of counterculture badass, while, being in the Bible Belt and trying to be defiant and rebellious. Okay,
you think so? Because I think he was much more of a practitioner, and to this day has even evolved even more. And even, we know that he was drinking blood. We know he was sacrificing animals. And we know his girlfriend.
True, yes, that is true.
Yeah, Dominique Tier said she drank blood. Her whole family drank blood. And her cousin from California, TJ Tier, was the spokesperson, for Transylvania vampire cults around that time. In fact, I think she might be still to this day. She was for a very long time. So, how'd these two find each other? Yeah, that's no low-level occultist, to be the spokesperson for vampires and stuff, Vampires.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's not low-level stuff. And somehow he, in West Memphis, Arkansas, he managed to hook up with her cousin, with her whole family's drinking blood, according to them. At the time. And then he kept practicing while he was there in his prison cell. And
he's got an image to maintain, and I think that's part of it too. Especially when you're in prison, you have to try and make yourself look bad, so you're not preyed upon by other prisoners. But I think it's all about image with that.
You think so?
It's nothing but it's not just the whole occult thing, but it's like he's got an image to maintain. Due to his, oh, look at me, I'm so different. I was persecuted because I lived in a Christian town, and look at me hanging out with Johnny Depp and Eddie Vedder, and so he's got to keep that. He's got to maintain that image.
Well, I would agree with you as far as the part is like wearing these sunglasses all the time,
that kills me because he wears these sunglasses constantly. And he says, "Oh, I have a vision problem from being in solitary in prison." If that was the case, then everybody who ever set foot in a prison would be outside wearing their sunglasses all the time.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm interviewing some prisoners coming up in a couple of weeks. And what about? Did you ever see the video on YouTube where he's being interviewed while he's in prison, and he starts talking about how he lost all his teeth?
No, I haven't seen that one, but.
It's great. He's going, I was under such intense torture that I lost all my teeth. And the interviewer goes, but you have your teeth now.
In some instances, he lives in such a fantasy world, it's ridiculous. I mean, when he got out of prison and he moved to Salem, New Hampshire.
Right.
I'm sorry, Salem, Massachusetts. Was it New Hampshire or Massachusetts? Because I know the Salem both.
It would probably be Massachusetts, because that's the one where the witch hunts went on.
Right. And it's like he thinks like a 12-year-old goth girl. Hmm. It's like, ooh, I'm going to move to the symbolic, the symbolic witch hunt capital of America. It wasn't a very subtle message that he was sending.
Right. But let me ask you this now, too, because we know now that he's out, he's hanging out with guys like Eddie Vedder and Marilyn Manson and stuff like that, but also with people like Genesis P. Orridge from the Process Church. And they were a hardcore, real satanic cult that a lot of people allege, including Maury Terry, were behind the Son of Sam murders and all kinds of stuff. Even had connections to Charles Manson and stuff.
Eccles, to me, is the second coming of Manson. As a matter of fact, he's even more successful than Manson because he's got more followers than Manson, and he's out of prison.
And it seems like an unlimited money supply behind him.
Oh, yeah, he's got that Hollywood money behind him.
Yeah, and unlimited Hollywood supporters too, as well.
Yeah.
So now, when you started speaking out again, so when you turned, were you part of a? Did they find out about you on the website that you had turned from a supporter to a non-supporter?
Well, I wasn't the most active supporter to begin with.
Okay.
I mean, I was just like, I saw the movie and I was just like, I wrote one post about it on my blog back in like 2001. And I was like, just the usual. This is a shame. They should be had to granted a new trial and should be released and blah, 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 blah. And then when I finally, and for 6 years, I just like, it was in the back of my mind, but I wasn't really the most, fervent supporter about it. And then when I was talking to a former blogger who no longer blogs, he was like, no, man, they're guilty. And I was like offended. It was like, how can you think that they're guilty? And then then I started more looking into it. And then that interview I saw with Dr. Griffiths, and it wasn't like, anybody had said, oh, look at this guy. He's no longer, no longer a supporter. It took them a while to take notice of me. And that was probably a few years since after I turned, because I started, before he was released from jail, I started writing about, the supposed DNA evidence that, that they're trying to point a finger at Terry Hobbs and things like that, and supposed, recantation of testimony.
Yeah. Before we get into Terry Hobbs, what do you say to people when they say to you, well, if they're guilty, why were they let out of prison?
Because I don't think that the prosecutor, Scott Ellington, I think he knew that he wouldn't be able to win with all the Hollywood hype. I don't think he would have been, and the unlimited resources that they have, that he wouldn't have been able to retry that case. If they got a new trial, he probably knew he would have lost due to the fact that, it's been however many years since the trial and witnesses change, witnesses have trouble remembering, and, especially the CSI effect. But, they say, well, we found this hair that we think belongs to Terry Hobbs, and then people think, that automatically makes Terry Hobbs the killer, which it does not.
Yeah, it would have been a tough, for that little tiny prosecutor's office down there in West Memphis, Arkansas, it would have been a huge deal to try and stand up against this legal dream team that they had put together, especially when they have the funds to put up a billboard in town saying, with dollar signs on it.
Yeah, exactly, and setting up the tip lines and everything.
Oh my God! Anybody can get off with that kind of, especially 20 years later when witnesses are dying and forgetting and have new credibility issues in their life. Things come up, DUIs and stuff, that they can be attacked on the witness stand. Now, let's get into Hobbs a bit. Now, a lot of times too, what I'll get is people will say, "Oh yeah, those poor kids, they're not guilty." And I think the stepfather did it. And before you can even get into a debate about that, you have to find out, well, wait a second, which stepfather?
Which stepfather, yeah. Is it Terry Hobbs or Mark Myers?
Right. So go ahead and tell us about that.
Well, that's part of the problem, too, with the West Memphis 3 defense, is what I call, the spaghetti defense, is they throw things against the wall and try and see what sticks. With the first 2 movies, it was like, we're pointing the finger at Mark Myers, Mark Myers, Mark Myers. And then when the DA evidence came out, or this alleged DNA evidence, it all of a sudden switched to Terry Hobbs, Terry Hobbs, Terry Hobbs. But there's a lot of people within the supporters who hadn't heard about the DNA evidence and still thought it was Mark Myers, even though Mark Myers himself is now a supporter of the West Memphis 3 all of a sudden.
Yeah, I know. And a lot of people, too, when you start getting into that, they'll say, the one with the teeth, the one with the teeth there, and the knife. He had a knife on him. He gave it to the producers. So,
the one whose wife died, that one.
Right. It's just so bizarre. And I try and explain to these people, I'm a criminal defense investigator. Right now I'm working on a defense case right now. And this is what we do. You try and punch holes in a prosecution's case. You come up with a lot of crazy stuff like Bojangles Man, and maybe the stepfather did it. And we're talking about Byers back then. Whatever you can come up with. What were some of the other ones besides Bojangles? It was Bojangles and there was Byers. That was pretty much it, right?
Yeah, it was Mr. Bojangles, Mark Byers, and then Terry Hobbs. And now, within the past couple of years, they come out with this theory that Terry Hobbs was smoking weed and having some kind of gay orgy when the kids stumbled upon it. I was like, really? I mean, is that the best you can do? Yeah. I mean, it just sounded something like, someone read it to me once, is like, it sounds like an 8-year-old trying to tell you about a dream that they had. You know, it's how preposterous that defense sounds.
And there's even a little adjunct to that theory that involves something with sewer tunnels, and the kids were playing down in the sewers because they were fans of the Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles.
Yeah, the turtles. They're going on about turtles and how these cuts were caused from wild animals, and they were blaming snapping turtles on the brutal injuries that these kids had. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And if you notice, after all that talk about turtles, Damien Eccles went out and got a tattoo of a turtle.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Oh, let's take a little quick commercial break here. We're with Trench Reynolds. He's the main blogger over at trenchreynolds.com. That's where you can find his blog. And if you want to hit him up on Twitter, it's twitter.com at Trench Reynolds. That's TrenchReynolds. And we'll be right back after these messages with more on the tragic case of the West Memphis 3. And now a word from our sponsors.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland street scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Hey guys, if you like the show and you want to show your support, check out the Opperman Report Patreon. You can go there and become a member for $3 a month. We have all the shows that you hear Monday through Friday on AM/FM radio. We have all those shows, but we cut out the ads, so you can hear that content ad-free. There's a $5 section where we put up all the old member section shows are going up over there. And then there's a $10 section where we have brand new content. 8 hours of exclusive content per month goes up there in the $10 section. But listen, I put up a lot of free stuff too. We put up documents, court documents, photographs, announcements. So you should make the Opperman Report Patreon a stop. You should stop there once a day and check out what's going on over there. That's Opperman Report Patreon.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. So Trench, we're here tonight with Trench Reynolds, and he's has a blog called TrenchReynolds.com. You can also find him on Twitter at Trench Reynolds. So Trench, what is your reaction when you hear people say the Terry Hobbs did it because there's DNA evidence?
Well, I looked at it realistically. I mean, they found one piece of hair that was tied within the shoelaces. I mean, and that hair could have came from anywhere. I mean, these kids, were at Terry Hobbs' house all the time. It could have been picked up at any time. And the fact that, like I said, the CSI effect with people who think the CSI TV shows are factual, think that, that automatically makes Terry Hobbs the killer. When if you look at it realistically, it does no such thing.
Well, that's true because, first of all, we don't know, it's never been established whose shoelaces were tied to which kid,
Right.
So it could have come from his own stepson in his own home, could have been attached to that shoelace.
Exactly.
Right. But then even then, it's not an exact match to Terry Hobbs. I believe it's like to 300,000 people who live in that town.
Oh, something along those lines. It's like, one in 300, 1 in 500,000, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's not excluded, but he's certainly not. It's not an exact match either way. Yeah. So
again with the CSI effect, that's people don't get that. They're just like, if it has any remote possibility of being belonging to Terry Hobbs, then he must be the killer.
Yes, it's so true. When here you got these guys, they've confessed so many times, and you got to wonder, they must be keeping Jesse Miskelly out of the limelight because he'll confess again if you ask.
Oh yeah, I believe the same thing. I mean, he couldn't stop confessing.
Yeah. Were you around for that whole thing with the True Romance? That girl that was visiting him had a relationship with him while he was in prison.
Which one, Lori Davis or before her?
No, True Romance was a supporter. That was her screen name on the WestMemphis3.org site. And she was a huge supporter, and she was donating like a ton of money every month, like $700 every single month to their commissary funds. And
right.
But she had a relationship with. You familiar with the story?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, well, when she had a relationship with him, he made some kind of admission to her, and she went from becoming a supporter to a non-supporter. And they went after her. They actually left a note on her car. They went and found her where she lived and left a note on her car. So these confessions are going on right up until when I left that whole scene with those nuts because of my own problems with them.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see here. What do you make of the Pam Hicks?
To put it politely, she's 40 pounds of crazy in a 20-pound sack.
Well, you can't blame her though. I tell you, if I lost my kid, I'd be.
That's true. But for some reason, I mean, she's like lashing out at her ex-husband, and she jumped on the West Memphis gravy train too, along with Mark Byers.
Oh yeah. Before we get to Pam Hicks, what do you make the reason why Mark Byers switched sides there?
Oh, because according to the supporters, now the limelight was taken off of him.
Oh, really?
So he's going to go, where the money is.
Sean was saying he was having money troubles right before he switched sides.
So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I wonder why none of the other parents ever came forward and said, hey, I was offered money too. Do you know of any story like that of another parent coming forward and saying, hey, I was offered money, but I turned it down?
No, I have not, but I wouldn't doubt it.
I wouldn't doubt it either. Now, with Pam Hicks, at one time, because I'm trying to get her to come on the show, because currently now she says that Terry didn't do it, and she's actually put out a statement saying that. But now,
I hadn't heard that.
Oh yeah. And I had Terry Hobbs has text messages too from her, where she says, "I know you didn't do it. You didn't do it. I'm not, So that's all.
But yet, a few years ago, she was in the courthouse with Jason Baldwin saying, coming up with this ridiculous theory about, Terry Hobbs doing it.
Yeah, what was that, though? That was like a civil lawsuit, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it was. And it was summarily thrown out.
Yeah. I'm trying to get her on to talk about that and figure out what's going on with that. Yeah, so it seems like she goes back and forth, and she's had a lot of problems. And like I said, if it was me, if I lost my kid, especially at that age, you got kids yourself?
I have stepchildren, yes. But they're grown at this point.
Then you remember when they're little, It's my God, so anything would happen to my daughter, forget it. It'd be crazy right now.
Yeah, I remember when, because I currently live in North Carolina. Like I said, I'm originally from New Jersey.
Right.
And back in 2002, there was like a string of child kidnappings. Like, I think that was the year Elizabeth Smart was kidnapped, among with a lot of others. And when we drove up from North Carolina to New Jersey to visit my parents, I didn't take my eyes off my stepdaughter at any time. Anytime we, on the way up that we stopped at any rest stop or anything, I made sure that nobody was going to grab her. But I would definitely understand.
Yeah. I was just involved in a case just recently in the past month where this little 13-year-old girl met some guy online, and he came to the house. They stole the parents' truck, took off cross country. Tennessee. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was my case. Yeah, I mentioned. Yeah, I got them on Nancy Grace, and it's interesting now because now that they found them, and this guy's a convicted sex offender too. This guy, he was 35 years old. She was like 13.
Yeah,
she was my daughter's age, and now they're saying they're going to charge the kid with stealing the parents' truck and all that stuff. So I don't know what's going on in a little small town there. They do a very
I read that too, because that was another story that was featured on my website.
Oh, it was?
And, And I didn't post about the report that's charging her, because I'm trying actually, now that she's been found, to keep her name, out of the media, because, this is something she'll look back at with regret, I'm sure. But, she's 14 years old, and she stole her dad's car and met this sex offender from Georgia, and they were like missing for 2 weeks, living out in the woods before someone in Virginia turned them in.
Yeah, they were going from like one Walmart to the next, And I thought, oh man, that poor dad, he was a wreck, man. The mother too, both of them were just a wreck throughout that whole situation. But thank God the kid's back, and they got this guy in jail now.
Yeah, because usually they're not that lucky.
Yeah, I know. So what other stuff are you working on your blog?
Well, like I said, I started out doing school shootings. There's a long, involved story how I got into that on the website. It was a case of mistaken identity during the Columbine frenzy after that happened.
Why? Because you lived in Colorado?
No. I was at the time I was using the screen name, because this is back in '99 when everybody used screen names instead of their real name.
Right.
It was days before Facebook, and I had a website. It wasn't exactly what it looks like today, but I called myself the Trench Coat, because all my, growing up, all my favorite comic book characters wore trench coats, like the Punisher and the Question and John Constantine. So, like, I wore trench coats since I was 17, so that was a natural thing for me. So when Columbine happened, it was like, a couple of media outlets assumed that my website had something to do with Columbine. Yeah, so that's how I got into that. And then from there, I noticed that a lot of these kids were plotting these school shootings, were, leaking their plans out on social media. Like back then, it was MySpace. So I started tracking crimes on MySpace and Facebook and things like that. And then that led to tracking crimes on Craigslist and Backpage, because Craigslist was like the original social network. And they had a huge, human trafficking problem. And now Backpage is the one who has the huge problem with law enforcement and the state's attorneys general. And I work on a myriad of different topics on the site now.
Hey, what was your conclusion about Columbine? Because I had William Zabel on my show. Did a really long interview. I think it was like 3 hours. Are you familiar with his work on Columbine?
I'm sorry, who was that?
William Zabel?
No, I'm not.
Okay. What was your conclusion on Columbine?
I just think that these were just the two kids that were what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, they're the product of a society where no one is held responsible for their own actions. These kids had criminal records. They were actually known to be bullies rather than being bullied themselves. Right. And it was just another case of, media misinformation getting out there and becoming quote unquote fact. I mean, they have just about as fervent supporters as the West Memphis Three do. Again, another one of the similarities between Columbine and West Memphis. Like I said, if Damien Echols had been born 10 years later, he probably would have been a school shooter.
Yeah, I never heard anybody say that before, but when you said it, you're probably right. Or a theater shooter, because he said himself he wanted to become famous. But before we get to that, the thing with the Columbine, do you think other kids were involved too in planning that and carrying it out, and maybe even other shooters?
I mean, one of the parents of the Columbine kids said to New York Times some years ago that she had no reason to apologize. Meanwhile, the guns and that were attained and the bombs that were built and all the planning was done under their nose. And these parents were like, if you read the reports, these parents were just like totally oblivious to everything that was going on. Yet, when Columbine happened, the father of Eric Harris, Wayne Harris, I believe it was, automatically knew that it was probably his son who was doing it.
Well, not only that, but when the cops showed up in one of the parents' homes, they could smell the gasoline from outside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was just oblivious parenting, and two kids who thought that that they deserved the world, that they were supposed to be, the special snowflakes, that they deserved more respect from their peers than anybody else. With the Eric Harris, especially with this megalomaniacal complex. Like I said, the similarities between him and Eccles are pretty obvious.
Yeah, that's so true, because you're probably right, because the school shootings and the theater shootings weren't popular back in those days. But then again, I do think there was a definite occult aspect to the murder of these three boys. And I think it was a planned ritual killing that he was graduating from sacrificing these animals. And he'd even talked to that several people about as soon as his child was born, if it was a male, he was going to sacrifice his own child, which is
right.
One of the reasons why they keep an eye on him. So I really believe that it was the motive was a ritual sacrifice. Now,
no, I believe it was an opportunity killing, like a thrill killing,
just totally spontaneous.
Yes, a crime of opportunity. But like you said, it was to make him look like. Because he went about bragging about it. So he's like, yeah, look, I'm this satanic badass who killed these three kids.
Yeah, very interesting. And then they had Jason Miscali felt guilty the very next day. And Jason Baldwin, what do you make of him?
Well, from what I understand, those two are no longer talking, Baldwin and Eccles, because they had, conflicting movies going on.
Right.
So that should really tell you all you need to know, because Baldwin's basically trying to be Eccles. And that's been the whole problem from day one, is what it sounds like.
It really is amazing, because any other case where the convicted, confessed murderers who then pled guilty would then go out and try and profit from it, there would be people that would object to it. And even, I assume you hang out in all the true crime forums, as well as I do for years and years. And those are a special brand of people. They're very...
Yeah, yes, they are.
They're like a lynch mob, like and they're going after anybody that's even slightly guilty. No one even deserves a free trial anymore,
Mm-hmm.
A fair trial, I meant to say. No one even deserves a fair trial. Just cops show up, mobile firing squad, just show up and kill them.
Oh yeah.
But
yet somehow, with all these books that he's been making in the movies, that he's been producing since he's been out of prison, it's ridiculous. Yet in these forums, if God forbid Casey Anthony we should talk to, not that I'm saying that she's deserving of any praise, but she was not convicted.
Right. She was legally.
And if she were to give any interview or try and make some kind of money, they would be down on her like a ton of bricks.
George Zimmerman too, legally found not guilty.
That is correct. Yes.
Nobody gives a damn. Doesn't count. Because on HLN, they told me they're guilty. But here you got this guy Eccles. He made his own, failed a polygraph, made his own admissions to softball girls, all this stuff. Lost at trial, and then pleads guilty.
Yeah, and the investigation, people act like the investigation is still open. Like there's some West Memphis, Arkansas cops out there, trying to find, or some investigator trying to find the real killer, and they're not. It's closed as far as the law is concerned. The three are guilty. They've pleaded guilty, and there's no investigation.
Right, and you'll even see them doing these petitions where they're trying to petition for a pardon, and these guys aren't even applying for a pardon. No,
and even I'm not a big fan of the governor of Arkansas, but he even said, like, no, this has to go through the court.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Now, have you ever been to that page on Facebook, the West Memphis 3 Friends page, where these guys are the friends of the West Memphis 3?
No, I have not.
I'm in there. And it's run by that dentist, who put together that video of somehow he got a hold of Terry Hobbs' dental prosthetic. And
Right.
right. Now, what do you make of that?
Just more amateur armchair sleuthing. Those people who think who hang out in this forums, like you said, they're special people.
Yeah. I actually showed that. I'm trying to do a show with a couple of forensic odontologists that actually have testified in court in real life, and prepare exhibits for court. And I'm trying to get them to come on the show. But when I showed them that thing, they were just laughing that it was just pathetic. But then again, it's like, you're right, special kind of people that just go for this. Now, see, I have a theory that that there was something in the blood sacrifice of those kids that it gives occult powers to these characters to get people to believe their lies and to fall for their lies. What would you make of something like that?
I just think that Damien Eccles knows how to play upon people's emotions.
Okay.
He can be very charismatic in that way. And with a lot of these cases where people think, it's like, oh, they're false accused, it's emotion over logic. If they hear the story, they identify with it, like I once did, and they just shut out any kind of counter argument. It becomes more of a belief than it does an opinion.
Right. It's like a religion.
Exactly. It's like a cult.
It is. And did you notice too that how even the nuns are part of this cult as well? Because they all get to know each other. They all kind of hate each other, but in some ways they kind of like each other and respect each other. And they have to behave in a certain kind of protocols, And these are people they socialize with all day long, even though they're arguing with them. And it's like this unique world, like no other that I've ever seen on any other trial. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. And even I've talked to people, Pat Brown, the criminal profiler, Diane Diamond, any of these people you talk to, as soon as you bring up Steph Watts, as soon as you bring up West Memphis 3, it's like, that bunch. Oh, they don't like me. Because you say one word and they come after you like maniacs.
I know. It's like I told you, before we, when we were communicating through email, I had the same problem with them.
Yeah.
They found out, obviously Trench Reynolds is not my real name. You write about crime, you tend not to use your real name if you're not like a big time author like William Ramsey or somebody like that. So they found out who my real name was, and they were trying to post it all over the internet. They were trying to use it as, intimidation against me to stop writing about Eccles. And they even mailed something to my house. This is the first I've talked to that. I have talked about this on my own private Facebook page. That's the first time I'm talking about it in public. They mailed something to my house. It was sent in a type of canister that was wrapped in electrical tape. So, your first thing you think is that it's a bomb.
Right. But
when we opened it up, it was like they sent fecal matter through the mail, to put it politely.
Right. Yeah, I had a similar.
It's very reminiscent of the way that people say that Scientology intimidates people who used to belong to them too, allegedly.
Yeah, it would seem that's where they would have gotten, So just recently you wrote this article about, by the way, I had the same kind of thing happen to me too with this bunch. And it's one of the reasons why I left is because I just knew things were going to get ugly because one of these guys especially was just kept trying to taunt me about it. And I knew who he was and where he lived. And I said, I gotta, this is going to get ugly fast and I'm going to wind up in prison. And it's just not worth it. So I just left the whole discussion. But now, just recently, you wrote an article about that case down in Florida. It's like was connected to Wicca or witchcraft. I think the sheriff called it witchcraft.
Right.
And so, give us that story.
I'm not familiar with the story itself, but from what I understand, there was a triple murder down in Florida. And it was on the blue moon of the month, and the police officer, one of the police officers investigating the crime, who commented to police that he believed that this was some kind of ritual crime. Specifically, he said that it was, related to Wicca. And I'm trying to find that article right now. And then one of the West Memphis supporters, who was a practitioner of Wicca, and, I do not harbor any ill will towards her for, being a practitioner. That's, she's guaranteed that right. But, she compared it to this quote unquote satanic panic of the West Memphis free trial. And I just simply pointed out, and she posted on her blog about, that the three were innocent, and that this was a witchcraft, and that other evidence points to, she didn't come out and say Terry Hop, but that's usually imply. And I just wrote a piece, saying, well, first of all, they're not innocent. They were convicted. Their convictions were upheld several times. With the Alford plea, that's technically a guilty plea. It just says that and I'm saying, and as far as, holding him up as a Wiccan icon or martyr or whatever, I think does the Wiccan community a giant disservice, because Wicca is all about respecting nature. Well, Damien Echols does anything but.
Yeah, that's so true. And you'd think, I always say too, of all these people that make excuses for this guy, okay, let's say he didn't kill these kids. We know he killed these dogs. We know he was skinning these dogs alive, jumping up and down, and treating their heads, hanging them from the shelves in the back. We know about everything in Exhibit 500. Under no circumstances this is like a nice guy, somebody to be admired in any way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I even looked up, because I've had friends who back in the day claimed to be Satanists and everything, and I've read the Satanic Bible and all that. And even in the Satanic, I hate to call them commandments, but it says, that the rules of earth, they call them, it says, do not kill non-human animals unless you are attacked or for your food. And it also states, do not harm little children. So even Satanists should probably distance themselves from Damien Echols if they're not already.
Yeah, but Crowley says if you want to do human sacrifice, it's best to do it of a young boy, under the age of 8, I think he even said, to get the best results from it. I think even till today, I think Echols is more of a Crowleyite than he is a Satanist.
Right.
Oh, boy. Well, listen, we're getting to the end here. Anything you want to leave us with before we go? Any other topics you've been covering or anything? What are you working on in the future?
Just whatever comes up in the news. I'm trying to think what's the biggest story I've been working on lately. Just usually the one I've been working on most is, Backpage.com and the fact that they're, deriving money from human trafficking and refuse to admit to it. And it's gotten to the point where the sheriff of Cook County, Illinois, wrote to Visa and MasterCard and asked them to stop doing business with Backpage, and they complied.
Oh, really?
So now the only way that the only way that traffickers can place ads on Backpage is with Bitcoin.
Really?
Yep.
Not even PayPal. Yeah, right, because PayPal is controlled by that same company, First Data.
Right.
So
Bitcoin is the only way they can accept payment now. Both American Express, Visa, and MasterCard have all dropped them.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's surprising too, because they're pretty. They will pretty much do anything, those guys, as long as they're getting paid.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of scary too, man. If who did this? The governor of Florida?
No, the sheriff of Cook County, Illinois, which includes Chicago.
So a sheriff contacted, I guess it's First Data Services, right, that he contacted?
I don't know. I'm not sure who he contacted. I just know it was whoever handled, he contacted both the companies behind Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, they control like 80% of all the credit card companies, processing companies.
Yeah. And he sent it on official Cook County letterhead, and he asked them to please, terminate your business arrangements with Backpage.com. And they complied. Now, Backpage is suing him because their claim has always been, freedom of speech. It's their right to, post these ads, and they said it's not prostitution; it's escorts, quote unquote. And so he's been I don't want to say sanctioned, but he's been instructed by a judge not to contact the credit card companies anymore. But the damage has already been done. And so it sounds like Backpage may be in the death throes of their human trafficking careers.
Yeah, because Craigslist used to have the same section. What was it called? Adult services,
yep.
Right?
I used to rally against them as well.
Yeah, they took that down, yeah.
It was great at the day that they finally closed down that section, but they still have a problem with child predators on their site on Craigslist.
Oh yeah, I could tell you. We had one here in town. I forget the exact details of it, but basically it was like a 15 or 16-year-old kid saying, hey, I'm at this motel right now. Anybody want to come over? And I sent that to the Vice Squad here locally, and I got on the phone with the Vice Squad here locally. And I know they didn't check on that for a couple of days. So, that'll give you an idea of how effective that is, man.
Yeah. And Craigslist still refuses, because none of those Craigslist ads are monitored. They supposedly rely on what they call community policing, but when your community is filled with pedophiles and child predators, then who's policing? It's the inmates running the asylum at that point.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Well, Trench, you cheered me up, that's for sure. Okay, we left this on a really happy note. Thank you very much. We're here with Trench Reynolds. Thank you so much, brother, for coming on the show and talking about the West Memphis 3. Anything new comes up, give me a call, and we'll bring you right back on. Okay, brother?
Not a problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night. And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Before Epstein was the Franklin cover-up. Before that, the Finders. And long before that, the Cleveland street scandal. Pedogate Primer is a concise intro and overview of a growing child abuse epidemic worldwide. It features shocking instances of institutionalized and organizational pedophilia throughout history. Churches, cults, the world of arts and entertainment, the government, NGOs, charities, and major corporations are all complicit or culprits in many instances. Pedogate Primer delves into material that for many may seem like the stuff of conspiracy theories. For this reason, the book draws on academic resources, declassified documents, and other reliable sources, and steers clear of conjecture. Such shocking true stories need no embellishment.
Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too, on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal.
A flooded home or business is never easy to deal with. You're left with a mess to clean up, having to deal with the insurance company to pay for the damages, not to mention the memories that are lost that you cannot replace. And Aquadam can be another tool in your arsenal to protect your home or business from the floodwaters, a hurricane storm surge, or the king tides. Give Aquadam a call at 707-764-2119 or look us up online at aquadam.net. We can help. We're also offering 10% off the price to anyone who mentions they heard this ad on the Opperman Report.
Hey guys, if you like the show and you want to show your support, check out the Opperman Report Patreon. You can go there and become a member for $3 a month. We have all the shows that you hear Monday through Friday on AM/FM radio. We have all those shows, but we cut out the ads, so you can hear that content ad-free. There's a $5 section where we put up all the old member section shows are going up over there. And then there's a $10 section where we have brand new content. 8 hours of exclusive content per month goes up there in the $10 section. But listen, I put up a lot of free stuff too. We put up documents, court documents, photographs, announcements. So you should make the Opperman Report Patreon a stop. You should stop there once a day and check out what's going on over there. That's Opperman Report Patreon.